people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Another look at Katie Taylor's upcoming swan song in September. People here will never forget. Eddie Hearn says massive show planned for Katie Taylor's final fight. Matchroom promoter Eddie Hearn spoke to Ring Magazine today after the announcement of Katie Taylor's farewell fight at Croke Park in Ireland. Here, Hearn reflects on the difficulty in making this homecoming fight for Taylor and how grateful he is for Taylor and all fans to get what he promises to be a night to remember. We kind of went into this with a Katie Taylor attitude, which was a kind of refuse to be beaten attitude. Never say die. There's nothing you can't overcome. Hearn said of negotiating the venue. She retired, really, 4 or 5 months ago. Went to lunch and said, I'm done, because if you can't do Croke Park, I'll never fight again. At that point, we accepted. We're not going to do Croke Park. After some time, she got in touch and was like, I want to fight again. I want to do Croke Park. Is there nothing you can do? I was like, look, let's go again. And we tightened our braces, and so did Croke Park. And we just found a way. I'm so glad we did, because similarly with Tyson Fury against Anthony Joshua, those incredible journeys, we would have always been kicking ourselves that we never got Croke Park done in AJ versus Fury. So this will be incredible. This will be like nothing you've ever seen in boxing before. It is the biggest female boxing event of all time. It's the biggest crowd ever for an individual female athlete, and it's one of the biggest events in Irish sporting history. And it will be a night that people here never forget. I have a deep veneration for Katie Taylor, not just because of her individual accomplishments as an amateur and as a professional, but because she was the gateway for me to even start watching the women. I heard about Katie, saw her in action, I was blown away. And that's when it dawned on me, there must be other female fighters like Katie. And that's when I found out about everybody else. But it really did start with Katie. There was all this hullabaloo around this girl from Ireland debuting as a professional, and I thought to myself, well, she must be good if they're talking about her, because they don't normally talk about women boxers, and I saw her. It starts with Katie. Hearn dug a little deeper into how hard it was to make this event happen at this particular venue. It's extremely challenging. At first, you feel that there isn't the support that she deserves, and I was vocal early on talking about the costs of Croke Park, kind of like a lack of desire from the government to bring the fights here, and I probably went off on my usual tirade instead of probably just staying with it a little bit more. The logistical hurdles, expenses, are significant, and it is what it is. And that's when we have to look at it and sort of say, it may not be the biggest event for us financially, but what it will be is a night that we'll never forget, at a moment that's very important for Matchroom Boxing, for Katie Taylor, of course, for the country, for the brand, for everything. These nights hardly ever come around, let alone once in a lifetime. It'll be a celebration of not just Irish boxing and Katie Taylor, but Irish sport. And that's where I have to stop Eduardo, because Katie has been so influential, so quintessential to the big women's boxing boom of the last decade. To relegate this fighter to a region, just one, feels almost criminal, since her influence is the reason girls even get to box in the Olympics, even get to fight for medals. A big part of the women's boxing boom of the last decade was women's entry into the Olympic Games. That's why all of a sudden the women boxers you started to see were much, much better than they were in previous eras, because you had standout amateurs and medalists. Women's boxing seemed all but a novelty before, whereas the fighters you started to see, that really raised the bar for the women and helped to shatter the glass ceiling, taking the sport to places it had never been. And it has everything to do with Katie Taylor boxing in front of the IOC to convince them to let The women fight.
Fight.
It's what pisses me off about Katie, that you'd never know it because she doesn't say it. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't crown herself the most important figure in the sport. The most influential, the most consequential, like so many others who crown themselves the greatest thing smoking because of their individual accomplishments. They have not had the effect on this sport and this industry that Katie has. You've got so many fighters now that think their individual accomplishments are why women's boxing is where it is. It's not about an individual, and I guess that's why Katie never made it about herself. Her influence, her role, it's because she's a real ambassador for the sport. Her and Amanda's recently launched tournament for the young girls that want to get into boxing. See, that's what real ambassadors do. They want to leave the sport in a better condition than when they found it. Like Amanda Serrano once said, she wants the girls that are coming up behind her to not only match her accomplishments, but surpass them. Because that's what real ambassadors do. They don't make it all about themselves to hog all the glory. The sport is going to miss Amanda and Katie jointly, that likely won't box beyond this calendar year. They're both set to retire this one. And it's hard to say that I look out there across that boxing landscape and see a sea of worthy successors. I just see a bunch of selfish broads benefiting from the trail that they blaze. They jointly, in my opinion, are the GWOATs, the greatest women of all time. And when they're gone, they will be sorely missed. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, nothing changes. Watch Xander Zayas go through camp as he prepares for Boots Ennis showdown, with a big super welterweight clash on the schedule for later this month, when Xander Zayas defends his world titles against Jaron Ennis on June 27th. Matchroom Boxing takes fans behind the scenes of Zayas in training camp as he physically and mentally prepares himself for the impending battle. One I anticipate will be his final battle as a junior middleweight, because win or lose, I think he's going to move up after this. He looks huge. Creating a unique situation for Jaron Ennis, who was a very big welterweight, bigger than anybody that they put him in the ring with, where for the first time it seems, he's not going to be the bigger guy, he's going to be the smaller one. How many times have you seen that? Same focus, same hunger, same dedication, same everything Zayas said of training camp. Nothing changes. It's another fight. Most important fight of my career, but every fight is important. Nothing different. I got to keep being who I am, being true to myself, know what works for me, exploit it! This might be the most high-profile fight for Xander Zayas, but is it the most important? When, after a while, every fight matters. Every fight is important. Every fight is make or break. While I don't think a loss for Xander Zayas would be as consequential as a loss for Boots, in a very general sense, they're all important fights. After a while, they all matter. That's what it comes down to. I know who I am, I know what I put myself through every camp, and I know put the shifts when I need to put the shifts, so whatever he says won't affect me, because I've been here before. I've been here since I was 16 years old. Zayas hasn't for 1 second expressed any doubts that he's not going to come through against Boots, but he says he's still taking him extremely seriously, as he knows he's a serious contender in this fight. I think the bookies have got Jaron Ennis as the betting favorite on the premise of his hyperbolic buzz, based on the hyperbole that has surrounded his career from the moment he stepped into the public light approximately 4 years ago. I believe it was in 2019 that Cameron Duncan took him over to Showtime, but he didn't really gain any traction or any attention until recent years, when the people at Showtime tried to use him as a shield to protect their golden goose, Errol Spence. And so a lot of what people think about Jaron Ennis is more based on their perception of the fighter than what he's actually done and what he's actually accomplished, because when you revise his resume for a guy who was at welterweight that long,
Not a lot of substance there.
but he's the fighter with the buzz, and so based on that buzz, he's the betting favorite. This is his chance to legitimize that buzz and himself. He's the hardest opponent in my career, Zayas says. Every fight was a step into that direction, and obviously facing somebody like Boots, former world champion, coming up to a new weight and wanting to be the king of the weight class, is obviously challenging, because you know he's coming with his best, but you've got to expect the best out of me, and I promise it's going to bring the best version out of Xander Zayas.
Far some tough rounds with Boots back in Philly. They're saying that fight with Xander might be really happening in June. What do you think of that fight? What chances do you give Xander based on your experience sparring and getting rounds in with Gerard?
I mean, I think it's going to be a way better fight than people is giving it. You know what I mean? I think Xander kind of a big dude too. Yeah. Boots is real strong as well, so yeah, he kind of a big dude. But man, I think it's gonna be a war in my opinion. I think they're gonna bang it out.
Do you ever spar with Xander?
When we was young. When
was this?
We was kids. Like we this was probably like 2017, like almost 10 years ago. Like it was like 2017.
2 years before he became pro. Yeah.
Yeah. So we was real young.
Was he always a boxer first? Is that always his style?
He was always he always been like a boxer, like an aggressive boxer. You know what I mean? Like basically like he could bang, but he always had that boxing in him. Like he could box. You know what I mean? So even then he had it. Xander could fight, man. You know what I mean?
What do you think's being underrated about him? Because a lot of people right away they're like Boots, and you may be picking Boots too, but right away you said it's a better fight than people think. What do you think is his athleticism being slept on? I know you mentioned he's a big guy, but what do you think is maybe being overlooked about Xander that makes him really competitive with Jaron?
Xander, he's real good at one thing I always liked about Xander. He's real good at sticking to the game plan. Like he listens very well in the corner. You know what I mean? To instructions.
It was Tiger Johnson giving his input on the upcoming Xander Zayas versus Boots Ennis fight. And you heard how he described Xander, that he's a guy who can bang on the inside, but he's always had that boxing in him. He's always favored being more of a boxer because he's a boxer puncher. So is Boots. Not all boxer punchers are created equal. Some boxer punchers lean more towards the boxing, others lean more towards the punching. Xander leans more towards the boxing. Boots leans more into the punching. He's a very aggressive boxer puncher. Though I'm not that high on Boots' fundamentals. His X's and O's? Mo. I think he's a physical specimen. Big, strong, fast, athletic! Though I'm not that high on Boots' fundamentals. His X's and O's? I like Xander's a little bit better. The drawback for Xander is he just doesn't seem to punch that hard. He can mix it up in the pocket, throw combinations, simultaneously protect himself really well, step out, move around, go for a walk. Movement seems to be what bothers Jaron Ennis the most. He looks the best with guys that are going to come forward, stand in front of him, wing a lot of shots, but against movers, that seems to be his Achilles heel. So when Tiger Johnson says that this fight will probably be better than people give it credit for, that it's going to be a war, I see what he means. Xander presents as the biggest opponent that Boots will have ever faced, simultaneously the best boxer that he would have ever faced. Where Boots isn't actually the biggest guy Xander would have shared the ring with. He's not. Maybe the best boxer. And that's a big fucking maybe. But no, not the biggest guy. Xander has been in there with bigger guys than a Jaron Ennis. I wonder how much or how little that's going to matter the night of, in what is the fight of the summer. We'll see. Now, as it pertains to tomorrow's fight between Ryan Rozicki and Chris Billum-Smith, Dana White's Zuffa Boxing is sued by Ben Shalom's Boxer on the eve of debut UK show. Ben Shalom's Boxer is taking legal action against Zuffa Boxing, the upstart promotion fronted by Dana White. The lawsuit comes on the eve of Zuffa's first show in the UK, which features two fighters Boxer alleges were unlawfully poached from its roster. Chris Billum-Smith, who headlines the bill in Bournemouth on Saturday night against Ryan Rozicki, and Sam Hickey, who opens up the main card with Todd Tompkins, are said to be at the center of the dispute. Boxer is seeking urgent injunctive relief against Zuffa and Sky, which is broadcasting the event. Sky inked a long-term deal with Zuffa in March after its 4-year deal with Boxer expired at the end of last year. A statement provided by Boxer to the Daily Mail reads, Boxer can confirm it is seeking urgent injunctive relief against Zuffa Boxing and Sky Sports concerning the promotion and proposed participation of fighters who remain subject to binding contractual obligations to Boxer.
Nobody likes their own medicine.
Would seem that Ben Shalom and Boxer are getting a taste of that, because when they first got the Sky Sports deal, what were they doing if not targeting other fighters that were under contract with other promotions? Joshua Buatsi, Lawrence Okoli. At the time that Ben Shalom goes in their ear and starts whispering sweet nothings, both were attached to Matchroom.
They weren't the only ones.
At the time that Boxer launches, they specifically targeted a lot of Matchroom fighters, male and female, to comprise their starting lineup, their starting stable. Now, it would seem that somebody's gone ahead and done the same thing to them. Boxer believes that all parties involved are fully aware of the contractual obligations owed to Boxer by the fighters being promoted for Saturday's event. Despite this, those fighters continue to be advertised and promoted without Boxer's consent. As a result of the conduct it has witnessed in recent months, Boxer has been left with no option but to seek further relief from the English courts.
Do you anticipate that this will get in the way of tomorrow's fight, since this seems to have come down in the 13th hour?
Its application seeks orders to prevent further interference with Boxer's contractual rights and business relationships, and to prevent the use of fighters who remain under binding agreements with Boxer until those contractual issues are resolved. Former WBO Cruiserweight champion Billum Smith claims his contract with Boxer, which he signed in 2023, expired at the end of 2025. However, Boxer argues that Billum Smith's agreement with Zuffa came within a period when they had matching rights on any offer.
Well, when did Chris Billum Smith strike that agreement? Because he's just now making his debut under the Zuffa Promotions banner. Did he sign a contract last year, or was it this one?
Boxer also alleges Hickey was still under contract when the Commonwealth gold medalist made the switch to Zuffa in May. Zuffa Boxing and Sky Sports have declined to comment. Shalom had previously suggested he would take litigation against Zuffa during an interview with Seconds Out last week. I think they see me and they think, oh, he's a nice guy. He's not going to do anything, said Shalom. You can't just go in and ignore that fighters are under contract and being paid by another promoter.
Well, isn't that what you did with Matchroom's fighters?
Look, I know we're in the world of Trump and in the world of this and the world of that, but there's still some sort of business practice. They ignored that we had a matching right on Chris Billum Smith completely. Not just the matching right, but an exclusive negotiation period. They're ignoring that. Other fighters on that fight are actually completely under contract. What are you supposed to do? It's crazy. To be honest, thankfully, we live in a country where you can't do those types of things.
But that's what you did with the sauce. That's literally what you did with Lawrence Okoli. He was still under contract with Matchroom when you started talking to him.
So as stated, it would seem that old Benny Boy is getting a taste of his own medicine, and I don't expect him to like it, but why would his fighters be so quick to jump ship to go to a new promotion that's never done a show in the UK? It's the money. Zuffa's got more money than
Boxer.
Zuffa's got a Sky Sports deal.
Boxer doesn't.
We are 6 months into the calendar year, and how many shows has Boxer actually done? They've already lost a major acquisition in Carolyn Dubois, who's migrated over to MVP. It would seem that Chris Billum Smith and some other fighters have migrated over to Zuffa. They're not about to let their bills pile up waiting for Ben Shalom and Boxer to sort them out. They're doing what they have to do. I don't expect Ben to like it.
But those are the breaks.
I don't think this lawsuit is going to go anywhere. Ben simply doesn't have the money muscle.
To be honest, Benny Boy's been outmatched from the very beginning.